After the release of Kirby's Dream Land in 1992, Kirby saw huge success in the gaming market. Naturally, Nintendo wanted more, and they asked game director Masahiro Sakurai to port the game to the NES. This didn't sit right with Sakurai, however. He listened to the criticisms that Kirby's Dream Land had on the Game Boy. Kirby's Dream Land is too easy of a game. Skilled gamers wanted more challenge. Sakurai knew that the player base of the NES had a more skill-based mindset than the casual mindset of the Game Boy players. Therefore, Sakurai did the unthinkable. Instead of just simply porting Kirby's Dream Land to the NES and calling it a day like Nintendo wanted him to, he instead decided to develop a whole new game. Thus, Kirby's Adventure was born. Masahiro Sakurai's goal with Kirby's Adventure was to take the simple gameplay of Kirby's Dream Land and improve it to the point where skilled gamers can enjoy a good challenge while also not alienating the casual players that gave the game its success in the first place. This led to the single most important and most influential inclusion to the Kirby series that has ever been made, the copy ability. The team at HAL Laboratories believed that the copy ability would allow players to endlessly experiment with the game, creating a great amount of replayability. They came up with 40 different copy abilities and narrowed it down to the best 25. Sakurai also added the sub-games because he feared that players would learn of Kirby's expanded moveset and believed that Kirby's Adventure was a difficult game, so he created simple and easy to understand minigames to break up the difficulty. Adding all of this stuff within the game resulted in Kirby's Adventure holding the record for the biggest file size in an NES cartridge, which is honestly mind-blowing. Let's see if Sakurai and his team's efforts really did result in the biggest and best Kirby game so far. The story is much bigger than it was in Kirby's Dream Land. Kirby's story begins as grand and epically as any journey with a nap. The people of Dreamland cherish their after-lunch naps, but when Kirby awakens to realize that he didn't dream about anything, he decides to investigate. Apparently, no one in Dreamland has dreamed at all today. This was very strange to Kirby, so he decided to check the source of all dreams in Dreamland, the Fountain of Dreams. When Kirby gets there, he finds a very shocking sight. King Dedede is bathing in the fountain, and the Star Rod, the source of power in the Fountain of Dreams, is nowhere to be found. When Kirby confronts King Dedede, he tells him that he split the Star Rod into pieces and gave them to all of his friends throughout Dreamland. Without hearing much else, Kirby embarks on his quest to get the pieces of the Star Rod back from Dedede's crew and restore the Fountain of Dreams to what it once was. After defeating Wispy Woods, Paint Roller, Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright, Kracko, Heavy Mole, and Meta Knight, Kirby finally has all of the pieces of the Star Rod except for one. The final piece of the Star Rod is being held by King Dedede himself. After one final showdown, Kirby reassembles the Star Rod and puts it back in its rightful place within the Fountain of Dreams, and all is right with Dreamland. Or so you would think. Suddenly, an orb of pure evil emerges from the Fountain of Dreams and starts immediately exuding its dark powers all over Dreamland. King Dedede reveals that he wasn't splitting the Power Rod and watching over the Fountain of Dreams to be a jerk. He noticed that a nightmare has infected Dreamland and wanted to put a stop to the darkness that it was spreading. In reassembling the Star Rod and placing it back in the Fountain of Dreams, Kirby accidentally released Nightmare to continue raining his evil powers over the denizens of Dreamland, making all dreams into nightmares. King Dedede launches Kirby and the Star Rod towards Nightmare so that Kirby can finish it off. After defeating the Dark Orb, it runs off to the moon, to which Kirby follows. This is where Kirby defeats Nightmare's true form and saves Dreamland and maybe destroys a chunk of the moon. Whoops. This game's story is unreal for an NES game. When you think of NES games, you think of games with super simple plots. Mario must traverse 8 worlds to save the Toads and Princess Peach. Mega Man must defeat the 8 Robot Masters and defeat Dr. Wily. Simon Belmont must traverse Castlevania to defeat Dracula. Unless it was an RPG, NES games did not have complicated plots, especially if it was a 2D platformer. Not only does this have a full story that you would see in a typical platformer, but it subverts your expectations with a twist ending. Remember, this is only the second game in the entire Kirby franchise. To someone in 1993, King Dedede is the villain. To not only have King Dedede not be the true villain, but to have him actively on your side is mind-blowing. This is also the game to introduce fan-favorite characters like Nightmare and Meta Knight. Overall, the story of this game is RPG levels of good and really shows just how much you can do without saying any words. The story of Kirby's Adventure gets an A+. This game takes the gameplay of Kirby's Dream Land and builds upon it incredibly. The inclusion of the copy ability brings a new dimension to the gameplay that was just not present in the first game. It allows for infinite amounts of replayability since you can approach a situation with almost any copy ability and put it to good use if you're smart enough. It leaves enough suggestions to the player in which a copy ability can be suggested for a level so that casual players can feel powerful and get through easily, but also leaves the player just enough agency to choose another copy ability and use it creatively to get through the same situation. This is some god-tier level design right here that modern games should be looking to for inspiration. Unfortunately, there is one major setback that the gameplay of this game has, and that is its hardware. Being an NES game, the one with the biggest file size, there's going to be a few limitations. Having such a large amount of things happening on the screen with such layered and detailed sprites and background artwork will make the game itself lag. This game experiences a lot of lag, which wouldn't be so bad. I usually don't care when an NES game slows down, it just comes with the territory. But the problem here is that it results in a lot, and I mean a lot, of dropped inputs. This part here specifically makes it incredibly difficult to make it to this cannon in time because the game lags so hard that I can't jump in time to dodge this Waddle Dee. It doesn't affect the gameplay too much, but inputs get dropped often enough for me to point it out and call it a problem. For all of these reasons, Kirby's Adventure's gameplay gets an A. Kirby's Dream Land is a beautiful, beautiful game. The sprite work looks like a cleaner version of the Game Boy game, but where the presentation of this game really shines is its backgrounds. Jesus Christ, the backgrounds of every stage in this game is stunningly beautiful. Typically, backgrounds in a video game are done by someone who has extensive knowledge in game mapping, but in Kirby's Adventure, things were different. In Kirby's Adventure, the background artist would hand a drawing of the background to the game mapper, who would then create the level around the background. Assistant designer Takashi Saito was quoted in saying that the backgrounds of this game were meant to be pretty enough to look at on their own. The music in this game is godlike. Every single track in this game is an iconic piece of music that will be used in Kirby games from henceforth. No final boss theme in video game history elicits an emotional response in me like the build-up and payoff to Nightmare's theme. There is not a single bad song in the soundtrack. Usually I wouldn't talk about a specific level in a review, but level 6 in Rainbow Resort was a very, very pleasant surprise. It is a nutshell version of Kirby's Dream Land as a whole, and even shares one of the same secrets that the original game has. Just to put the cherry on top of the whole thing, it's the final level before you fight King Dedede. The whole level is even monochrome like the Game Boy was, but chose to keep Kirby pink, showing how far Kirby has come since just his first game. It's just such a cool level that I had to highlight it. The presentation in Kirby's Adventure gets an A+. Completing Kirby's Adventure is a little bit more complicated than completing Kirby's Dream Land, but not by a lot. To complete Kirby's Adventure, you must first beat every level in the game and defeat every boss. Standard. Second, you must find every secret switch within a handful of the levels in the game. This unlocks museums, sub-games, and duels within the hub worlds. Once you finish the game, you unlock Extra Mode. Extra Mode is the hard mode of the game. Not only are you not allowed to save your game anymore, but you only have 3 ticks of health before you die. That's less than half of the health Kirby had before. Once you 100% the game like this, you are awarded the rank of Superstar and are given the word perfect next to your save file. That's it. Not gonna lie, having no completion bonus is a little underwhelming. Would I say it's worth completing the game? For the casual players, not really. The extra mode is definitely a challenge, but not too much of a challenge where the average player will really want to do it other than for the reason of playing the game again. A word really isn't a good completion bonus, unfortunately. Kirby's Adventure is everything a sequel should be. It took the story of Kirby's Dream Land and made it better. It took the gameplay of Kirby's Dream Land and made it better. It took the presentation of Kirby's Dream Land and made it fucking better. Everything that Kirby's Adventure is better than its predecessor. Masahiro Sakurai, Satoru Iwata, Shigeru Miyamoto, and Takao Shimizu hit it out of the park and shot it into space. This is an NES game that feels like it belongs on the Super Nintendo. This game does things that I never knew an NES game could do. Kirby's Adventure is one of the best games on the NES and will influence the rest of the Kirby franchise thus far. With all of that in mind, Kirby's Adventure gets an overall rating of A+. Thank you everyone so much for watching this video, and I hope you guys enjoy the new format of the retrospectives. If you like what you see, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell. All the social media are in the description below, so check them out as well. We also got merch in the description. Next week, we'll be talking about the next Kirby game in the lineup, Kirby's Pinball Land. But if you're too impatient to wait a week, you can become a channel member and watch it right now. I'm Bottles, and I bid you, my well-esteemed guests, adieu.